Welcome, survivors, burnout community, and those just interested. It's Kelly Buboltz, trainer, author, speaker, and your burnout prevention mentor. Burnout is not taboo. It's our reality in this chaotic, fast-paced world. But we're not going to let it drive the narrative to our stories. We're going to do something about it. So let's dig in. Welcome back to the Burnout Diaries, where I'm going to be reading off program participants' email or telling their stories with permission to share in things that are so relatable for us that are navigating this ever-changing, ever-demanding world. And how do we respond to that stress? How do we begin the conversations with people about change? How do we start to lead this future of work and modern day ways of working? And an email that I want to read today is prevalent for a lot of working parents, a lot of people that are juggling it all, both at work and home, and it's just not working anymore, right? We're draining our energy and never regaining it. So here's the email. Hi, Kelly. I heard you speak at a conference last month, and your message about managing energy instead of just time really stuck with me. I love my job and my team, but I'm running around daily trying to balance work with the before and after daycare rush for my kids. It feels like I'm just surviving the week. I think a flex schedule or reduced hours would really help, especially since there's some work waste I know we could clean up. But my company has made comments in the past about not doing remote or flex work, so I'm nervous about even bringing it up again. How do I talk to my boss about it without sounding like I'm checking out? It's a really prevalent question, right? Because we want to have these conversations, we want the change, but we don't want to be seen as weak or defiant or that we don't like what we do. And as she mentioned in her email, she likes her job, she likes her team. It's just not a good fit in her season of life right now. So let's dig into this a little bit. And as a working parent myself that had to have these conversations, it can bring a little bit more clarity on how to lead the language of the conversation, how to approach this with a little bit more open mind and curiosity by doing some of these steps. So the first one is starting by shared goals, not personal needs. So I actually use this in union negotiations and union grievances and union relations, because the moment we sat at a table with each other, we were just in opposition. We were both defensive. We were watching our words to see if they're going to be thrown against us. And so when we could guide the conversation back to shared goals, it had a way better outcome. We were less defensive, the energy shifted in the room, and we could actually be a little bit more creative in the solutions that we provided instead of that block of defense that we put up. So when you can start with shared goals and not the personal needs, it opens alternatives for even solutions and alternatives that maybe you haven't even thought of yet. So in this specific situation, she's looking for a little bit more flexibility, that before and after care is a little chaotic. Maybe she wants to reduce hours, and it has been poo-pooed on before. And I don't want to discount that those comments were made, but you have to remember those were from before. So a lot has changed in these last couple of years in technology, in flex work, in remote work, how to do that. We were a very hands-on manufacturing plant when COVID hit, and so us going to remote work was chaos. It was disconnect. There was so much loss of productivity. But in today's age, where we're using technology a lot more, it's integrated, the systems aren't so expensive, and people are used to it. The conversation might actually be easier because it's not new. It's becoming the norm. So just remember that as you go into this shared goal conversation. The other thing to remember as you go into shared goals is it's not a shared goal between you and your boss. It's a shared goal that can benefit the team, that can benefit the company. So a great way to approach this is she identified that there's some waste, and if she would reduce that waste, she could probably reduce her hours. And so a great way to say that is, I've been reviewing some of my workload, and I noticed that there's a few opportunities to streamline tasks or reduce some repetitive work so that we can begin to refocus on efficiency. So that's the shared goal, right? Does she want the reduced hours or a 4-day work week or flex or remote role? Yes. But the shared goal is efficiency, productivity, getting rid of waste. So what you're doing is you're not coming in with, I need this, even though you do. You're not coming in with these personal needs. You're positioning yourself as solution orientated. You're not asking for a favor. You're not asking for preferential treatment. You're saying, this is something that I'm noticing. This is an opportunity in our team. And if we approach this, then maybe there's some of this available, which would be the flex work and remote work. Now, as part of that conversation that's more solution orientated, group orientated, you want to use some data, not emotion. Just coming from 20 years in HR, when emotion takes over in conversations, sometimes it's actually difficult to know what they want. So I've had these conversations way before flex work and fractional work, reduced hours, 4-day work weeks were even a topic of conversation. So we're talking 10, 15 years ago, and people come in emotionally, they're juggling lots, or they have some personal issues going on, and they're so emotional that I actually don't know what they want. Do they want to take time off work, like complete time off, unpaid time? Do they need a medical leave of absence? Do they need, short-term disability? Do they need support from therapy, or do they need to go see doctors? It was so messy around the emotions that I actually didn't know what they needed. And so really formulating what do you want and why there needs to be a change is going to be important. And a great tool to use is data, because data is factual. Data, depending who sees it, will be the same, right? It's not subjective, it is objective. So a great way to approach this specific situation of flex remote hours is to track where are hours being wasted. So you can track throughout a week the waste. You can track all the waste from being in the office and the interruptions versus if you could have remote work a couple days a week. You could track the meetings in which a goal was not achieved. And feel free to contact me through my website. I do have one of these dysfunctional meeting calculators for you to calculate out the cost of dysfunction, the cost of disengagement. So this is shifting the focus again back to the group to outcomes over hours. That if we remove this waste, we get these goals, but we also were able to save on all these hours. Now you're talking about all the things the company and the team's gonna gain, but you can also then begin to discuss, what does this look like for your role? For example, I have someone that didn't have before and aftercare. And so they actually flex their schedule where they remoted in from home in the morning, they got their kid off to school, and then they came into work. Or they remoted from home, depending on the deep work situation within their department. And then they would leave around like 2:30, go get their kid off the bus, and then remote in from home for a little bit. If the chaos at home before or after work was too much, she would remote in to make up her hours if needed. And how we did that is we made her hourly. She wasn't a salary employee. And so it was hour for hour that we were tracking. And if she didn't need to do 40 hours, she didn't do 40 hours of work. Maybe she did 35, maybe she did 32 hours that week, but sometimes we just fill the hours to fill the hours. So that's where this conversation is leading, is when you focus on outcomes over hours, you're using that data, you can begin this flex work, remote work schedule, because you're not focused on the hours. You're focused on, did I get the outcome and can I sign off? Or if it's chaotic at home, can I flex my schedule and just work a little later on this day? So that's where the flex comes in, is because you know the goal, you know how much you can produce, you know what needs to be done every day, every week, and that allows a lot more adaptability in your role. Now, the next thing I want you to do after that conversation is pilot it. I think sometimes there's an aversion in employers and leaders to try these new ways of working, because what if it doesn't work? Well, then you stop doing it, or you adapt, or you reroute. So frame it as a pilot program. Hey, can we try this for 30 days? I don't have daycare starting Monday. So can we try this for 30 days, 60 days? Can we pilot it out and review the results together? And I love when people say it like that, because I think sometimes employees come to employers and say, fix this. And it's very much put 100% on the employer to own. But two parties are involved in this, right? When an employee asks for something and expects the employer to do it, there's not a lot of accountability on the employer for follow through, for performance. It's just give me type of thing. And when you have an employee who says something like that, where we want to review the results together, there is already natural accountability on the employee to deliver their part of the bargain. Accountability on both sides already. The employer is committing to this flex and remote schedule, but the employee is still committing to results. Do you see how we're de-risking the situation? So I just pumped you full of outcomes and data, but can you deliver? And that's super important. I have worked with clients where remote work ended up back in the office. We had to be in person because they didn't have good foundations set up and they didn't have good conversations before that happened. So there were people that were slacking off and not performing. And instead of addressing those poor performers or the people that might need more of that office structure, they had the whole team come back when really like one or two people just need to be addressed. And it needed to be addressed earlier, because now it just looks like remote work doesn't work when really it was just a couple dysfunctional moments, dysfunctional people and process systems. So pilot it out. You can say no if the pilot doesn't work, but I guarantee if you have a pilot program, you had the right conversations going in, you have the right foundation set up going in, and you're reviewing these results together, it's going to be less likely that there's going to be a failure in rolling this out. Now, say you get through that part of the conversation. So we went outcomes, we're talking about team and group efficiency, we're using data, not emotion, we're talking about piloting, so it's not permanent, but like we're trying to get this to work. I want you to highlight retainment and engagement. This is at the point where you identify, I want to stay here. I love my team, I love my job, but it doesn't work. This work-life thing is an imbalance, and in my season of life, it doesn't fit. We don't have daycare available, or I pretty much go for 16 hours a day straight. It just doesn't work anymore. I want to stay here, but it has to be more sustainable. I can't provide my best work when I'm exhausted before I even show up for the day. So when you approach it that way, that is now more personal and individual focus. But what you're getting at is you provided them with the outcome-based result. You provided the data, which goes across the board, what the results could be, right? And now you're shining light on, I want to stay here and I want to make it work. I'm trying to be solution orientated, but it no longer fits in my season of life. And everyone can understand that because everyone's had a different season of life, right? And it comes in different shapes and colors and timing, but everyone's had something where work was just not working, right, with life. So highlighting the retention engagement of you and your position at this time is appropriate. When you do this in the front end, like if you want to keep me, then you have to give me a flex work schedule, a remote work schedule. Ugh. Like not solution orientated. It's extremely personal. It seems like preferential treatment. It seems like if I do this, what will be the next ask? And that's happened to me in HR is, they had a situation at home. We tried to work with it. Then they had another ask, and they had another ask. And they were never happy because truly the problem wasn't the schedule. It was all this other stuff that they were unhappy with. So when you want to stay somewhere, when you want to make it work, go solution orientated, group results, data, pilot it out, and then talk about retention and engagement. Because what it's saying is I want to move forward with you as my employer. Let's figure this out together. And that just has a whole different energy, right? It's creative, it's innovative, it's results orientated. So it already feels like it's going to work before you even started it. Now, the last thing I want to say in this specific case of her trying to get the flex and remote work, even though years before it was shut down, is it's okay to have the conversation. And I'm going to say have the conversation early. I do have situations that have happened to me in the HR world where employees waited too long, right? Things got really bad at home, or maybe their parents were elderly and now it's a complete situation where they have to completely check out of their job when we could have made it work. But then they come to my office and they're like, nope, today's my last day, right? They let go too far and we didn't even have a chance to have a conversation. So I want you to know, the more proactive you can be in this, the more space you give yourself to explore different options, because maybe they actually have a better option that you didn't think of. And I don't want you to pigeonhole yourself or back yourself into a corner before you even have to. This is when we kind of create our own stress stories in our head and sense of chaos and create our own challenges and hurdles when they don't even exist, right? We're creating this reality that never even happened yet. So I want you to be proactive in these conversations. Allow them to respond accordingly. And if you're using these steps, it's going to definitely go smoother than if you're approaching it with direct demands and emotion. Stick around, subscribe, and follow for future burnout stories that we're going to work through. Not just reclaim the energy, but lead it.
I know you're not lazy. Most people in burnout are high performers, those serving others before themselves. Don't discount this step today, the action in which you focus on your self-growth. Piecing together the puzzle is half the journey. Rediscovering yourself, energy, and establishing new habits is the other. Do not underestimate the untapped inner strength inside you. Explore more resources on my website to move from zombie mode back to liveliness. See you soon.